Welcome to the session on international channels. My name is Marion Williams and I'll be chairing this session here this morning. There will be a Q&A session at the end, hopefully, but I will stress, please use the microphone because it is being filmed for posterity and we'd like to capture your input. If you don't use the microphone, I won't call you. Time is tight, and they're very strict with us here, so let's get started. I wanted this session to explore not just what international markets are looking for, but also to give you some practical information of what's involved when you're working with international channels or on international co-productions, either from the point of view of multi-territories or multi-producers or multi-broadcasters. And one of the points I think we all decided was worth stressing, unfortunately it doesn't end when you get the money together. That's when the hell really does start. We're lucky today in terms we have panellists from the whole spectrum of the international broadcast industry, from broadcasters to distributors, and I'd like you to welcome Christian, who is not Bettina Hatami, as you can probably tell, and has stepped in at very short notice. Bettina has, to quote, a production going up in flames, not intentionally. But firstly, let me introduce today's distinguished group of guests. Many of you may know Anne Julian, if not personally, definitely by reputation. She's head of international development for France Television. She did actually start on the other side of the fence in producer-distributor called Téléimage in France before moving to France Television, where she's now in charge of international development for all of their channels. To my left here, we have the wonderful Liz McIntyre, who has the fantastic title of Head of Production and Development, Factual Western Europe. Basically, she's Head of Production and Development for the factual piece for Discovery Networks International. And up until recently, far more importantly, a very favoured colleague of mine. She's responsible for developing and exec producing shows, not just at the local level, so you would know, say, in the case of shows that air in the UK, but also all the way up to full global commissions. She previously also worked on the other side of the fence as a producer and director and series producer. To my right here we have Carl Hall, CEO and founder of Parthenon Entertainment, which are basically a producer-distributor of factual programming. Carl claims to have produced and exec-produced up to 600 hours of international television, which I think is probably a bit of an underestimate, to be honest, because if you actually work out how long he's been in television, he hasn't actually done that much. I've known Carl for more years than I care to recall, and if you don't know him, you should, and I'm sure by the end of the week you will. And again, Bettina, you're looking lovely today. Christian Beats, producer and exec director for, it's easier for me to say it in English, the Beats Brothers production company, and there's the other Beat brother at the front, Reinhard. Christian is an award-winning filmmaker. Among many awards, the latest has been the Hot Docs Filmmaker Award in 2010, is that correct? And he's...
The latest one.
Yeah, sorry, but it's the latest on your website, so you need to...
Really?
Yeah. So, who trusts the internet, hey? And some of his productions include FC Barcelona Confidential, and his one that he's currently working on, I think, is Farewell Comrades. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Christian also lectures, as well as making films. They have a production company primarily based out of Germany, and a number of offices. But I'm sure he'll tell you a bit more about that when his turn comes. So, without more ado, I'm going to firstly pass to Anne Julian to tell you a bit about France Television, what she does, and her experience of international productions. Anne.
Thanks, Marion. As Marion said, I'm now head of international development for documentaries for all of the France Television channels. And but I'm probably today going to concentrate a bit more on France 5, not only because I was commissioning editor for co-productions for 15 years at France 5, but because France 5 is a documentary channel, well, it's a factual channel, I should say, and most of the co-productions, of the international co-productions that France Television does are for France 5. And actually, I realize I'm going to show you 3 clips, and I realized that I realized yesterday that they all came from France 5, which is, but that's not unusual. France 2, which is the flagship channel of France Television, does also do a number of international co-productions, but just maybe 2 a year at the most. So that's why I've decided to concentrate on what France 5 does, because that's what's really more interesting for you to know how to go about co-producing with a channel in France, which isn't easy. The main reason it isn't easy is because a lot of French commissioning editors just don't speak English. So it's not just that they don't understand pitches that you send them in English. It's that even if you go to the trouble of trying to communicate with them, they don't feel comfortable working with someone that they don't understand. So that's pretty understandable. This isn't the case at France 5, where most of the people do. In fact, all of the commissioning editors who do co-productions speak English and work with you in English, and you don't necessarily need to go through a French production company to work with them, which is not really, which for the other channels, it's strongly advisable to hook up with a French production company. But why don't we start by showing some images. Now, before we roll the first clip, I'll just talk a little bit about it. I was going to show you a clip of a series produced by Green Bay and Parthenon, because I knew that Carl was going to be on the panel, but even if he hadn't, I'm sure one of the productions we've done together would have found its way here. Many years ago, with Green Bay, which is a Welsh company, we did France 5 did a co-production called Rivers and Men. I think that was the title. And it was very, very successful for all the partners. It had all the ingredients that we love, that it was about this iconic rivers around the world and how different and similar they are. So there's science in it, there's discovery in it, it's just one of those types of programs that I personally love because it has so much value in it and so many different aspects of it. And because that co-production went so well, we had always thought that it's sort of a formula. If you can do it with rivers, you can probably do it with mountains maybe, or whatever. And after, in fact, many years, we came up with islands. Well, Green Bay came up with islands, and it worked. And that was what I was going to show you, but it's so hot off the production press that it's not ready to show. So I'm going to show you a little bit. I'm going to show you the sort of sales clip of Rivers, just so you get a feel for the kind of co-production that Islands is. And in fact, I could have used Rivers as the example. So here we go. It's Rivers at Night.
It was shot at night. Yeah. Wonders of buffering.
That's a great name for a film. Maybe you're going to see me.
While we're waiting for the pictures to come up, I'll just say a little bit about one of the things that you often hear people like us say is, it's all about relationships. And this sort of is about relationships. But you always start somewhere. And when you have a successful relationship, when you start off quite well, or even if you start off, I've had a relationship with people where I've had really difficult co-productions, but it does help to get to know the people you're working with. And I think Carl is an example of a distributor who really puts you together with the producer as well. Some distributors sort of think, I don't want my broadcaster to get too close to the actual producer, because then I'll lose control. And I don't think that's true. I think the closer the broadcaster is to the actual producer, the better it is. And this is true for co-productions. It's hard for the producer, but it's true for co-productions too. Are we Is this not going to work? Okay, well, maybe we could, just before I start the second clip is, it's a co-production that that France Television did with Nat Geo. And, well, let's see the clip and I'll talk about it later.
C'est une destination mystérieuse et difficile d'accès. Surtout pour un voyageur solitaire.
I left this in French on purpose.
C'est un pays où la sorcellerie fait toujours partie du quotidien. Où le cannibalisme se pratiquait encore récemment. La photographe Oula Leman est la première à arriver sur place. Nous voici en Papouasie-Nouvelle-Guinée, au pays du peuple Anga. Oula va bientôt y enquêter avec le reste de son équipe sur une pratique censée avoir disparu depuis longtemps. La momification humaine. Mais même ici, on trouve peu d'informations sur ce rite. Aucune momification humaine n'aurait eu lieu depuis plusieurs dizaines d'années. Et les anciennes momies commencent à se détériorer. Une momie pourrait cependant faire la lumière sur les techniques utilisées par les Angas pour lutter contre la dégradation du corps.
Je veux trouver le dernier corps à avoir été momifié. Je pense qu'il renferme des indices sur l'incroyable procédé de momification utilisé ici sous les tropiques.
Et Oula sait exactement où le chercher, grâce aux précieuses indications du missionnaire Valtteri.
Okay, I left that in French on purpose because I thought, hey, I'm a French channel. They can, for once, let people see it in French. And of course, this was also for National Geographic, so it went all around the world. And I see Manuela from this documentary campus sitting there, and Ula, who's the filmmaker and the young woman you saw in the clip. I was her tutor at Documentary Campus for this project many years ago, and it got made. It was a very expensive film to make, so it took some time, but it has been very, very, very useful for us. And the other reason I wanted to leave it in French was that when you're co-producing with a French channel, French viewers don't really like subtitles very much, and so they leave. So we don't subtitle, and we prefer for international co-production something that is narration-led. But then if there are people who are speaking other languages in the film, then we just put a voiceover, and that works fine. And in fact, it works. I know that a lot of people think this is a terrible thing to say, but I actually think that you concentrate better on the film if it's a voiceover, because if you have to look down at it's not, when you're seeing a film in the cinema with subtitles, it's not the same thing. On TV, I think subtitles just don't work as well. So that's how we get around subtitles. And as I said, this was a co-production that was done with Nat Geo International. It was shown everywhere, and was very successful for France Television also. And I'll move on to my third clip. Are we going to be able to get that first clip? Let's do that.
The Yangtze River holds the key to China's future. Flowing over 6,000 kilometers from its source on the Tibetan Plateau to its Shanghai Delta, it's the most used waterway in the world, and one of the most deadly. In the last century alone, its floods have killed over 300,000 people. Now man has struck back with an engineering project designed to corral the river's destructive forces and bring it firmly under human control. The Three Gorges Dam is so large it's visible from space. Designed to produce enough electricity to power 1/10 of China's total needs, the dam feeds the frenzied expansion of inland megacities such as Chongqing, the fastest growing urban centre on the planet. But this progress has come at a huge cost. Upstream of the dam, the Three Gorges region has been drastically altered and some 2 million people forced to flee their homes. Downstream, at the mouth of the river, the impact of the dam is eroding the coastline at an alarming rate, threatening the very foundations upon which Shanghai's booming economy is built. This massive push for growth is risking environmental disaster. China's greatest river faces a critical new challenge. The huge physical barrier which the dam poses to traffic is countered by the most complex system of locks ever built. For ships travelling through these locks, it's a 5-stage, 4-hour ride through the cement corridors from one level of the river to the other. The system allows 10,000-ton cargo ships to travel 2,000 kilometres in both directions along the river's course. River traffic on the Yangtze is set to increase from 10 million to 50 million tonnes per year. This water superhighway is revitalizing China's inland provinces, where gigantic cities with populations of tens of millions are taking shape. The dam not only links these cities to the outside world, it quite literally powers their growth. By harnessing the river current, the dam creates prodigious amounts of electricity, crucial to a booming economy. This is the largest hydroelectric power plant ever built. When it's at full capacity, the dam's turbines will create as much energy as 18 nuclear power plants. Supporters of the dam claim its clean electricity is crucial in cutting carbon pollution and reducing China's dependency on fossil fuels.
So, even though that's quite a, gosh, it must be at least 5 years old, right? Yeah. And Carl was just reminding me that it was one of the first HD series. And of course, now that's so, you don't even think to mention it now, but in those days, it did make a difference. And it's still, I mean, we repeat that series, and it's still very, very popular. And as I say, we were looking to work, well, we work a lot with, France 5 especially works a lot with, ooh, okay, I'm being too long. So let's just see the very last, my last clip, which is only 2 minutes, 22 seconds, which is actually a French production. We can do them too. But it was also an international co-production. It's called Extinctions. Whew, I said it.
100,000 cheetahs at the start of the 20th century, 12,000 by the start of the 21st. The species is in critical danger of extinction. Still, while other endangered animals fight for survival, by all scientific arts, the cheetah should no longer even exist. The species decline, like its ongoing existence, remains among the animal kingdom's greatest causes. Some people refuse to accept this and are determined to find ways of turning things around. Will they solve the riddles in time? This woman, Lori Marker, is one of the world's leading specialists on cheetahs. If anyone can help the species avoid its death sentence, it's her. She's just brought back a badly dehydrated male cheetah from the Namibian savannah, an animal worn down by an unknown ailment. Its heart has stopped beating. The animal is placed under assisted respiration.
Okay. So that's an example. I'll be very, very fast. That's an example of a French-initiated co-production. I also wanted to put some wildlife in here because wildlife works very, very well all around the world. And don't forget that. Your channels love it. And it has to evolve with the times, which this does. It explains in five iconic animals that are under the threat of extinction. But each episode sort of has a ray of hope at the end. Anyway, these are the kinds of co-productions that really do function well.
Are these good examples of what you are looking for in general?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
they're quite big,
Yeah.
scenic movies in a
Big
way.
scenic movies. And those are the kinds of things that we invest in for co-production. I know that Sheffield tends to be much more sort of the creative documentary, current affairs type of program, but these ones are the ones that we are more inclined to invest in because, let's face it, they're the ones that work the best.
Okay.
And this is true not
Yeah.
just of France 5, even though these are France 5 examples. International co-productions, the ones that France 2 does, also tend to be sort of these big production value.
And do you think you're doing the same volume of co-productions as you were, say, 4 years ago?
Yes,
It's the same
absolutely,
market?
absolutely. Which is about, France 5 is between 30 and 50 hours a year.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I'll move over to Liz now, who comes from another international broadcaster, but with a slightly different style, I think.
Hi, it's lovely to be here today. I'm Liz McIntyre. I commission for Western Europe for Discovery International. And what I wanted to do was just talk through a little bit about what I look for when I'm looking for international productions. The first thing I wanted to do was show you a little taster of what I've been execing at the moment, just to give you a flavour of the sort of range of factual material that we've been playing on Discovery at the moment.
This is the 50 cow, this is what I'm looking forward to. Wow. To appreciate the real power of this weapon, watching is not enough. Well, that's your mate. On the way back home, the pilot's taken a bullet to the head, and the chopper is struggling to make it home. It's both shocking, but awe-inspiring all at the same time. This was 23-year-old Mary Ellis when she was a Spitfire girl.
I flew 67 different types of airplanes.
There was nothing beyond you. Give it to Mary, she'll take it. She'll get it there.
Just at the beginning, I thought, oh dear, and then it all came flooding back. It was so great. It's been the most wonderful
weeks on end and rely heavily on whatever illegal food they can catch.
Pretty much everything that's been put in front of me so far. And I've not eaten a monkey up to this point.
As I was watching this, I thought there's no difference between this animal to eating any other animal really. And because it had been killed, and I was quite intrigued, I ended up eating that spider monkey as well.
It's a bit early to say. Quite nice actually. I like that.
The feelings effortlessly us. I think the outcome will be much as when Christopher Columbus first landed in America, which didn't turn out very well for the Native Americans.
So all of those clips are either internal co-productions or co-productions with an external broadcaster. So it's a very interesting range. So this is the type of production that I'm looking for. We're looking for character-led series, process-driven how-to programming, formatted returnable series, fast turnaround specials that work internationally, and some local commissions, whether that be in the UK or any other country in Western Europe. And just quickly running through the factual genres, what works very well in all of Western Europe is adventure and endurance, and you saw that with Ed Stafford eating his monkey tail. Engineering and inventions is absolutely a crucial area that works very, very well as co-productions. Then history, military, turbo, science and crime work well, and to Anne's point, obviously we have Animal Planet as well, which works very, very well in every language. So if I just talk, so some of the people that we co-pro with, I'd like to talk about really the internal co-production system. If you come to me with a new idea, predominantly I'll be looking at how it works for UK and Western Europe. However, that said, what I like to do is speak to our US colleagues and try to get buy-in from them as well, which obviously helps with the budget. So that can be any of either the other D&I regions, CEMEA, Asia, PAC Rim, or LATAM.
CEMEA being basically Eastern Europe and Middle East.
Thanks, Marion. Marion's domain. Or the Discovery Channel in the US, Animal Planet in the US, the Science Channel in the US, military or ID. So it's worth bearing that in mind when we have our discussions. What type of programme genres are best to pitch for co-pros? What I've done is just outline the very broad spectrum of what I look for factual. But there are key ones that work particularly well to overcome language problems, which is a challenge that we're constantly looking at to refresh the brands and make the formats work in a way that are accessible for all languages. So what is useful when looking at the character-led propositions, which are the hardest, say that with experts? You saw the Elephant Man, and what we used there were international experts, and they were all experts in their field, looking at deconstructing Joseph Merrick in terms of scanning his body or looking at his speech or his movement. So we were able to draw upon the disciplines from a variety of experts, and that gave it a really truly international feel. You notice, however, we did use English as a second language, and there are all sorts of ways that you can either have people speak in their own language and have voiceover or captions. But what worked particularly well with this co-production that we did with Channel 4 was to have people speaking English as a second language. So that's certainly something that we can discuss when looking at groups of experts. I've mentioned about regional accent problems. I obviously don't think that regional accents are a problem, but for co-productions, again, it's something to think about and consider, where people sometimes, for example, if we're co-producing with America, they are keen on some UK talent, but find it very difficult to understand anything other than a Bear Grylls accent. So that's something really to look at.
Not a Geordie accent, as
Yeah,
Ms.
sadly,
Cole found
which
out.
is such a lovely accent. So, also, types of local humour. This is very interesting when looking at side-splitting jokes that work well in the UK. They won't work well in Sweden and vice versa. So that sort of area is also important when considering casting. Do the characters have universal appeal? I've touched on that. The way we got around that, the solution for the Elephant Man was creating this wonderful group of experts who worked so well together for the Joseph Merrick story. And yes, it's important to decide on what your lead language will be, and that really is the majority funder, and that the exec producer will be the driver for that in terms of who's put the most money in. And so just moving on to one of the key, so that was a little bit about character-led documentaries. They're hard to get right for co-productions with different languages. But what is a really successful genre is what we call the how-to process genre, what I call adult through the round window for any of you who remember their childhood days with children's programming and seeing how factories worked. And this is the how-to genre. One of our most successful is How Do They Do It, that WAG TV produces. One that Marion and her team devised in SEMIA was X Machines, which I'm glad to say I exec'd. And I'd like to show a clip of X Machines because it's really useful to show why this works as an international idea. I don't know if you have that, Steve, to hand. It's machine porn, basically, but...
Nice class.
Blade. It looks like a giant flying insect, but it's the world's most high-flying sniper. And it's on a mission to save the town. The biggest mobile crane in the world. A mammoth machine with a mammoth task to lift 2 of the world's biggest pieces of metal. Smashbuster versus Hulk. A vicious 50-ton mechanical monster with lethal steel teeth. In an epic battle to rescue the Gold Coast.
Thanks, Steve. It's fine. So, I love this series. This is another WAG television series. I don't want you to think I'm here to promote WAG, by the way, but they happen to be 2 process-driven shows that have worked really well from that production company. And we've just commissioned a second series of X Machines. And in terms of the D&I contribution, each region in D&I contributed to this series, and what we've been able to do is ensure that there are stories with enormous machines filmed in their particular regions, so that there is a great feeling, international feel to it. Crucially, it avoids a Euro pudding feel. It doesn't feel like it's deliberately some kind of deliberate attempt to fulfill editorial issues like that. But what it does do is allow us to have that kind of epic feeling of global machines. So that's the how-to area. Clip shows also work in this genre. I won't actually show the clip show just because we're quite short on time, but
we can come and show it at the end.
Yeah, it's a kind of good, it's a good way of having list shows. And with the small contributions of testimony from people throughout the world, if they can, we have them record in their own language, plus also use English as a second language if they're talking about witnessing certain dramatic events that we're showing in the clips. So again, that's a really good format. In terms of what's next, I'm looking to create global event TV, which can have simulcasting, and also work with digital media as part of the package of our commissions, and really, really welcome new and exciting ways with multi-languaging. And in terms of how I can help you, please see me as your a key point person for Factual for Western Europe. I'm really interested in one-line ideas that we can then develop accordingly. And that also includes AFPs, which I'd also welcome talking about offline.
Thank you, Liz. Two very different brands, two very different audiences, I'd imagine. And talking of many different brands and many different audiences, we have Carl to give the distributors' perspective on all of this.
Yeah, it's interesting coming in this order after the broadcasters and just before the producer. Is that what a distributor does, and is if it's doing its job right, is knit all the desires and editorial aspects, financing, legal aspirations of the different broadcasters into a package that gets a program made. Increasingly these days, in the good old bad old days, you can say you'd have a sale to America, you do a sale possibly to Germany, and a sale to UK, and you were fully financed. Now you could have up to 5 different broadcasters with different digital rights requests, all asking for different versions, which is like one wants a host, one doesn't want a host. All of this needs to almost be put into a business plan, and it needs to be done by a third party. It's an incredibly difficult thing for a producer, unless you're an extremely well set up producer or experienced. Could you look at a project from the beginning, really, and plan what we're going to do with it? It's easier for the big countries like Canada. You know, we own one of the biggest production companies in Canada. We have bases in Singapore, Germany, around there. You have to have so much local knowledge. And we're setting up one in Australia at the moment. All of those places, we access free money from the government, which helps the producers. Then we bring in the international money as well. But I'm going to show you a clip later of a co-production done between all the major broadcasters, which I don't think today would be as possible as it would be a year ago when I did it. But anyway, just to give you a general idea of our product, if I can just run our general MIP promo, which is the big sales conference we do twice a year in France. Okay. So you get the general idea, and that's about 6 months. So we represent about 150 producers. And one of the pretty good example of knitting together the different aspirations, and some of these are slightly political as well in terms of broadcasters, is we did a series with NDR in Germany where we raised the money and co-exec called Wild Russia. Independently, it was the highest rated show on National Geographic channels internationally. In the US, it went on Discovery Animal Planet and was their highest rated show there in that block for that time. It was then also, we made a parallel version in Welsh for S4C, which didn't conflict with any of the other broadcasts. Between all of those, and there were some other big global video deals and things like that, we managed to raise about £8 million for that series, which is one of the big, it's the complete natural history of Russia. It then is now sold to about 130 countries, completely financed within that. And it's one of those odd occasions then where you've got all the major networks working together to allow, it went on France 5, I think it did well on there as well, and nearly all the big European stations. It's one of those landmark series. In a way, it's almost easier to raise that kind of money on a big series like that than it is on smaller one-off documentaries. And this is the problem you've got. As individual, you need the clout to get into, and just physically having to go to the broadcasters alone. I mean, we spend over £1 million a year on travel, just in our company. So it gives you an idea how much FaceTime either the production side or our salespeople have with the broadcasters, because there's nothing like sitting in their office. I mean, you'll be meeting them at festivals and pieces like that. But the reality is now it is a huge negotiation, because there's also lots of legal issues. And I have 6 internal lawyers alone to deal with all the different. So, for example, we have output deals in Italy at the moment with one of the major channels there. It's just been bought by one of the big telephone companies who want all the VOD, download to own, all this kind of stuff. All these new rights they didn't want a year ago, we have to now accommodate, and all of those rights have been given to other broadcasters. And so you spend all your time having to be a lawyer, a finance expert, whatever, and then you remember, actually it'd be nice to make nice programs. So what we try to do is get you guys to make the nice programs, to worry about the creative, to actually get something that actually works, and we try to take all the pain away and do all the crappy bit, as it seems, which is actually raising the money, and without compromising you as well by putting too many broadcasters into the pitch, giving you, so your creativity is not stunted. But we'll just show you a clip from Wild Russia to show what the end product looked like.
17 million square kilometers. Some of the most savage and beautiful wilderness on the planet. A continent that is still largely undiscovered, and yet covers 1/8 of the Earth's surface. This is Wild Russia. Filmed over a grueling 3-year period, this 6-hour series showcases for the first time the struggles for life in some of nature's most diverse landscapes. The rare alpine wildlife of the Ural Mountains. The freezing seas of the Russian Arctic. Vast deserts and active volcanoes. From east to west, north to south. An award-winning camera team crosses all boundaries to capture dramatic wildlife behavior in spectacular surroundings. Like Kamchatka, a land of fire and ice, to the heart of Siberia, only the toughest survive the constant onslaught from predators. Through unprecedented access, we get closer and more personal than ever before. To an epic land filmed on an epic scale. And a stunning diversity of animals. From eagles fighting to the death, to bears that must go to extremes to make a kill. Our high-definition crews put their lives on the line, crisscrossing the 11 time zones. To bring us the incredible stories of 6 very different wild communities, as we have never seen them before. In Wild Russia.
Okay, So that gives you an idea. That was just the teaser that we raised the money on for the film. That's gone actually now. Last week, actually gone to full theatrical release in Germany, and I'm just doing a deal with Universal for international as well, saying that that even though it's been out as a series, it's now being we're now actually releasing a movie of it as well. We're doing the same at the moment on our first 3D project, which is a Canadian based for CBC in Canada, National Geographic. Channels worldwide, including the US, and NDR, first 3D polar bear film. The budget's about $1.5 million, and that's taken 6 months to raise the money because of the complex nature of getting the rights. Because we needed to do a theatrical release as well at the same time, and those rights are all grabbed by the theatrical. You become every project becomes a legal. Interesting scenario because we're cutting new ground because broadcasters are increasingly wanting to take more rights for less money, and you're trying to keep the product. They're also expecting higher and higher production qualities as well. So even though equipment costs may drop in case of HD, but now we've moved to 3D, there is no savings on equipment cost. There is, though, obviously opportunities for people equipment suppliers to test out their new gear, and that's what we're doing. We're doing in the Arctic. We've got at least 3 different camera systems with 3 different units, testing them out because it's such an extreme environment, minus 40, did all the rigs work at that point of view, and also from a redundancy point of view, we expect at least one of them to fail fairly quickly, and then the rest, hopefully we'll get enough of the film in the time that we've got out there. But 3D is a completely different thing, and one of the things you have to realise, and I think we'll get onto the technical aspects of this, is that when different broadcasters, if you aren't firm at the beginning that you're going to make one version, and it would be much easier to work with Liz, for example, and make that one version for her. But if she then, she's representing Western Europe, let's say the US come in, but they change channel in the US, so it moves from military to the main Discovery channel. It would obviously have a different look and feel probably, and a step up budget, and they would want their own kind of look and feel for that, and possibly an American host or whatever they want to do. So these things evolve, but you've got to somehow ground yourself at some point and say, right, let's keep with the original plan, and let's try to make sure the budget covers all these things, and you thought about post-production and production flows to get these things made, because you could make all these shows, then shoot everything, bring it back, and then just blow any profit you were ever going to be made, just by not making sure that you've actually got the technical side of the thing sorted out. And that happens a lot. And part of the distributor's job now, or at least for us anyway now, we own our own facilities companies as well. So we actually run a lot of our own production, third-party producers, through our own facilities, just to try to keep the costs down at an absolute minimum. So at least reversioning and different versions aren't an issue financially.
Is there a big difference? I mean, we're seeing different tones across some of these films here between, let's say, a cable and satellite broadcaster and a terrestrial broadcaster, whether that be a PBS or a commercial channel. Are they very different? Are they getting more different, do you think?
They are. I mean, just to simplify it, the cable and satellite, the Discoveries and Nat Geos, need volume. They need the quality, but they need volume. They've got to fill hours and hours. The terrestrials usually have very small slots, maybe 5, 8, 13 in a whole year now they can be very selective. They also do not want that same product that's running on the cable and satellites going out first there and then coming to their channel. They want something special and that looks unique. And so there you've got 2 versions. And then there's a whole different kind of factual producer, which actually a network which is actually more in line with the programs that are in the festival here, which are the factual entertainment channels like the ProSiebens and the VPROs and the Holland. These are entertainment channels that happen to do factual related programming, and they are totally different in their look and feel than the big grandiose programs that are running on the straight documentary channels. What you try to do now is generally is try to work out that the bit you get some pre-sales like a PBS sale, very big. You know it's going to be a big highbrow. Not chances there won't be a presenter on it. type show away in the US, maybe, and then internationally on the cable and satellite and other terrestrials, you do a slightly different version of that. Maybe a host creeps in, but they all want their own versions, and you've got to try and work that out within your budget, or at some point say enough. I'm going to try and do my best to answer everybody's problems by doing a certain type of show that ticks all the boxes. But that's the skill set that you guys have got to adopt now. Gone are the days where fully funded commissions, where you're working to one, the BBC or CBC or whoever it is, and they're going to fund the whole thing, and you work to one taskmaster. Now you've got multi-taskmasters, and they all want their own pound of flesh.
And also remember, pitch the right show to the right commissioning editor. Sometimes we can be nice and say, actually, we need to take this to so-and-so down the road. Other times we won't. That's actually a very interesting bridging point there, because Christian here has examples of having worked for a number of production partners and broadcasters with one film, which is a completely different side, I think, to what you're seeing from Carl's perspective. Would that be a correct assumption, Christian?
Yeah, my word is a little bit different. As an independent producer, maybe I'm starting to show you a little bit where we are. We're an independent production company from Germany. We are based in 3 cities, Hamburg, Cologne, and Berlin. We have 30 people working for us in these offices. And we started our business 10 years ago. And the market changed a lot in this 10 years. You're totally right. So we focused really on international co-productions to finance our program, because it's also, even the German market, it's very strong in documentaries. It's a big market there. We have a lot of channels there and a lot of money and fundings and so on. Even there, it's complicated and hard to full finance your program. What we do in our company is that what we're producing is very different types of productions or films. So we have, for example, to give you an overview, what kind of films we're doing. Autumn Gold is a feature-length theatrical release documentary. It's won many awards, audience awards worldwide. It was running on more than 40 festivals, or still running. It's an international co-production. It's an easy co-production because it's with Austrian co-production partner, and then additionally we have fundings from Germany and from Austrian. That's it. It's enough. So we raised around 800,000 euros for this feature-length documentary, and afterwards we found a distributor who's now Films Transit and is distributing it worldwide. So it's quite easy. Sometimes it's very. Sometimes it doesn't work out with international co-productions. For example, so we talk about success, but there's also sometimes production where it didn't work out. For example, we did a 5-part series from pioneers to millionaires. It's about the big brands like Heinz Ketchup or Lieber Strauss. They all came out from Germany and went to US. So the first thing is you think, okay, let's make a co-production with US, and to give you an idea what's it about, I will roll the trailer. Let's see if it works with it.
A patriot and a man of exquisite tastes. I've got a plan. Steinway and Sons.
It's from our elder brothers in America. She'll always bring you good luck.
And I brought a new product we make ourselves. It's tomato ketchup.
The only thing I am guilty of is running a successful company. Aviation is the future.
So this is a 5-part primetime series with recreations and so on. And we always start with a German partner. So we had involved NDR in Germany and NDR Arte. And then we went to PBS and WNET, and it went everything well, so they were immediately interested in Steven Seageller in these times. We started our production, had our pre-contracts with the PBS. It's very complicated about financing, but they said at least we get $500,000 from the PBS, might be more. Then the financial crisis came, and it was zero in the end. But we had the problem that we had to deliver to our partners in Germany, so we can't change the contracts there, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So it's a horror.
A funding problem.
It's a funding problem, yeah.
Rather than
you could call it a
problem.
funding problem, yeah. But in the end, it's a Hollywood story. We had a distributor who sold it worldwide, also to US. And
who was the distributor?
United Docs.
Okay.
And in the US, it's bought Smithsonian bought it there, so it's sold to 50 territories worldwide.
Okay. Is it a lot easier, do you think, if you are approaching it from, say, in the case of, say, German language, so you can get the German broadcasters on board, the Austrian broadcasters on board, potentially the Swiss broadcasters on board to fund something trans-regionally, shall we say?
I don't know. Even in Switzerland, Austria, and Germany, might be speak the same language. It's quite complicated, these co-productions.
Okay.
So for me, it's easier to work, I don't know, with Denmark and I don't know, Spain and other countries. It doesn't matter. I want to show another clip. One thing. Personally, I prefer to work with producers, not directly with the channels. The reason is we're doing a lot of cultural program where you could get also fundings in the different areas and countries. And also if you work with a co-production partner in the other country, they know their own market. So they get out more money out of the market. They get real co-productions and not pre-sales. So pre-sales is 10 times less, or more than 10 times less. So we worked in the last 10 years on a really big network to different companies in every country, and this helps a lot to finance really your program.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very important point.
For example, I could show you an example where what we right now doing. So the big range is also that we doing not only cinema released films. Like currently, we're working on a international co-production with New Zealand. It's a co-production called Shackleton's Captain. Let's see the clip.
An epic adventure. 28 lives in peril.
In today's standards, it's like being on a space station cut loose.
A famous explorer and the man he turned to save them all.
He was responsible for all of them.
A film based on the diaries of Captain Frank Worsley.
Frank Worsley, utterly fearless.
The inside story of Ernest Shackleton's doomed Antarctic expedition. Trapped and facing death, the men turned to Shackleton to lead them, but Shackleton needed Frank Worsley to get them home. A desperate rescue mission.
He was the navigator.
Trying to navigate to this pinprick of an island.
16 days, 800 miles. Worsley's navigational genius, their only hope.
If they were swept past South Georgia, that was it, and they knew that.
And this is where they began to realize just what a very, very special man he was.
The man history overlooked. The true hero.
This is also a direct co-production with an independent company in New Zealand. And we said that that's enough, because if you have more partners, it's always start to be complicated. And we involved here a distributor right now, after the first shootings. We could stop it, I don't know, stop this one. And we're working here with ZDF Enterprises. So, and they now dealing with different international channels like NetGeo, BBC, and so on, to find the right version for them. And we're working for the German channels, that we have the right version for the ZDF. And in New Zealand they do. They focus on their partners.
And the ZDF Enterprises, would it air on ZDF, the channel, as well as being handled by the Enterprises group?
Yeah, they aired on ZDF, but it doesn't matter, they also work with other programmers.
Yeah, they'll just... Yeah. And do they put money in, or are they just acting as a distributor for you? Do they help fund some of that?
They sometimes they do co-productions, sometimes they do MGs, minimum guarantees.
Right.
It's for me very important when, if I'm working with a distributor and I'm in the middle of the production, it's always the same problem. You need money to make it happen. So, and if you have a strong partner on your side, of course, then everybody's much more happy.
Can I just ask you as well, because I'm not sure I understand, when you say about co-producing with producers in the case of this film, what is that? How do they act, the other production company? Do they shoot it for you, or what is that relationship?
No, the best is really like here in Sheffield, to meet each other right from the beginning. And work right now from the beginning on the film. So.
But are they funding it, or are they just saying?
No, also the development where it goes.
You're just
for
working
example,
in a partnership. In
a partnership. Yeah. So you need a real partnership, and of course it's a business of trust. It's quite difficult, I think, our business what we're working on, because we, in the end it's a paper, and then say, okay, put 100, 2,000, or I don't know what kind of money in it. You don't know each other. It's difficult,
Yeah, oh, okay, that's an interesting idea. It's an important point.
Yeah. But sometimes, as we're doing also co-production directly with channels. So, and let me say, this is, it's much more complicated. I would like to show you clip. Right now we're doing, let me see. It's called Farewell Comrades. It's a 6-part series, history series about the collapse of the Soviet Union. We have the anniversary this year, end of this year. The angle is that we, right now, it's a producer's idea. It's a German-French co-production. We started with a German-French co-production, and then we said, okay, the angle should be told by the people who went through it. So it has an Eastern European angle. So we focused really from the beginning on that we went to, I think 3 years ago, to Sofia, and presented them our idea. There we started.
So you started, your first partner was Bulgarian television?
Yeah. No,
I think that's going to be a first.
As well. No, the first one were Arte, so we started with Arte, so it's German, French producers. Media event. For example, this project, it's a very hard subject. It's about history, it's about Eastern Europe, 6 parts, 6 hours. So we thought how we could bring up this kind of subject for the international market. We thought, okay, we have to bring it up as a media event. So media events helps you if you have a 360-degree or whatever you want to call it. If you build up a 360-degree program, you get a lot of more attention from everybody. So we developed a web format, which has its own budget. It has 400,000 euros, for example. We will bring out a book internationally, worldwide, and then a lot of events as well.
So it's almost like creating something that's so big it's global by definition in a way.
Yeah, I've tried to create a buzz. I don't know if you can call it like that, but but in the end, in this program we involved 16 broadcasters right now, right from the beginning.
I think when Christian told me this on the phone yesterday, I'm like, what did you say? I think it's gone up 2 since yesterday, actually, which I think must probably be a record.
I don't know. The idea behind that was that we needed really from the beginning the Eastern European partners. So we started with independent co-production partners in these countries. Also, it was very important for the development because we want to follow the question in this series how it came that the Soviet Union collapsed and nobody knows about it before, and to understand how was the daily life. But it's not one block, the Soviet Union. You have this many different countries, and this makes it right now. So we're in the middle of the editing, for example, and even in the development of the book, it was quite complicated because you have always these discussions that the Poland says we were the leaders for the collapse, and they said the Czech, no, please, come on, without us, Prague never would happen. Then you have the Hungarians and so on. So we have a lot of different angles in a film, and you have to deal with that. It's not that easy.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your experience with that. I'm sure people want to find out a bit more about that because it baffles me, which is a nice segment back to the lovely Liz here, who has a similar sort of, because up until recently I headed up programming for all of East and West Europe and Middle East and Africa, so I'm used to these conversations internally as a sort of international broadcaster. They're actually dealing with this in the office as well as outside the office, and we'll just touch briefly on some practical tips to think about.
Yeah, I thought it was worth mentioning these because they may seem really simple, but interestingly, when we do get the green light, and it's so wonderful that moment for both the producer and the commissioner when finally a production comes together, but without really setting in stone these key points, things can be a disaster. So really obvious things, agree at the start who the lead EP is, and that may sound obvious, but it's not. It's usually the majority funder, or it may be the person who has particular skills in the type of programming, or it may be the person that can speak the most languages and respond internally to all the stakeholders. So also agree how many versions, to Carl's point, and ensure the producer has costed for those versions at the top of the production before green light as you go to contract, because it's really difficult to get overages afterwards. So those are two kind of upfront things. Who will be who will be feeding to whom throughout the production? That's very much around the EP. Mirror that with PMD, with legal, and so on. Then also, the lead EP will be the one who is collaborating and collecting all the rough cut and fine cut notes. So there's one source for an agreed set of rough cut and fine cut notes. Believe me, otherwise there could be a number of sets that arrive and it's not helpful for keeping the production on schedule. How will the cut reach you? There are a lot of DVDs that go missing and so on. These days, most people go for FTP, and that is indeed a really important asset these days. If you're really up against it for rough cut and fine cut notes, don't forget that there's a 12, 14-hour delay, 6-hour delay in terms of time differences if you're, say, co-producing with India. So just be aware of that. Small things that seem obvious, but they're not. Also compliance, both Ofcom compliance and other forms of compliance, including cultural issues, are very different depending on your country. So again, agree those and be aware of those. I do remember my bottom gate, really, with working with TLC in America, where we could show a back bottom and America couldn't. So all of those things are small but significant points. And music tastes can really vary, so just be aware of what works in different countries and whether you're going to change the music in reversioning. And we've talked about foreign interviews, whether you supply additional second language interviews at the end as part of your deliverables, which you may well do as part of the master tape. And captions where the screen bugs aren't. Different bugs in different countries can be screen left, top, right, left, bottom, and there's nothing worse than your caption to describe who someone is, or your subtitles are can't be seen because of the bugs on screen on the day. So deliverables, really, I've covered that in terms of clocks as well, in terms of the different clocks for the different regions, in terms of your format and narrative beats. Again, that's something for pre-shoot scripts at the beginning. And finally, just in terms of stills and journalists coming, say you have an embargo or with a particular journalist, or you want particular journalists to come on location, agree with the stakeholders which journalist has the scoop, who goes second, and so on, and how many journalists you have on set at any time. And again, they're things where it can become very crowded, or that needs to be coordinated. And if all that works, you have an oiled machine production, and it can be really enjoyable and satisfying to collaborate. I did also want to mention Meet the Elephant Man was by Windfall Productions, and it was great to work with David Glover at Channel 4 in terms of very seamless co-production, so that was great. And there are a couple of editorial points as well. Are you going to do your interviews in metric or imperial? What we do in the scripts is we allow the interviewee to obviously speak in whether they be naturally imperial or metric. But also when the scripts are supplied, the producer has to add the metric or imperial so that when it's reversioned and revoiced, you have that information to hand. So the reversioning producer doesn't have to start scrabbling around at midnight with a calculator. And also, are you creating two versions with or without an embedded presenter? Again, Carl, you've touched on this. With some of the process-driven productions, like How Do They Do It, some local countries can add their local presenter at the bookending, at the part breaks, and that adds a really nice local flavour that they can do in their own time, with their own money, in their own way, but it's something to flag up, and therefore when you get the scripts, the producer can provide what the script will be for local reversioning and shooting of those bookends in each particular country. So it's just providing a kind of set of ingredients for the production which make everything easy for you to actually enjoy the material that you're shooting.
Thank you. I'm just going to open it up to people here at the moment to see if there's anything else that you feel that should be imparted in terms of words of wisdom.
I just wonder whether you should briefly describe, I know we take it for granted when we're up here drawing away, that a co-production is something where the broadcaster and you get together, it's a partnership, but they do take equity in the back end of the programme as well. But the quid pro quo is that they, on the other side, is they cash flow their payments during the production period. A pre-sale is when you go there, it's usually maybe half the amount of a co-production, and that's paid at the end or on delivery of the programme. And then an acquisition is literally when the programme is finished, you sell it, and that could be a tenth of what the original price would have been if you co-produce. So co-production comes always with a bit of a caveat, because you are then, the broadcaster is then owning partly, sometimes the copyright as well, on that program. A pre-sale is pretty clean of that. That's just cash, but it is not cash flowed. And in these days, cash flow is king if anybody's trying to make a program. And trying to get broadcasters to pay is as much of a hassle as doing the original deal. Trust me, we spend a lot of time doing that on your behalf as well. It's a big factor these days.
And I think it's important just to add what Christian was saying about having a co-producer. That's not necessarily going to get you the money. It's going to make things easier, and it's going to eventually get funding that co-producer might get. But you still need the minimum guarantee, or it's going to make things smoother when it makes sense to have the co-production partner. But it's not going to get money really up front quickly.
My feeling listening to that was more a case of producers working together in the similar way that commissioning editors actually behind the scenes work together. So you see something, oh yes, that might work for Anne, or yeah, a lot of it's a cliche, but the thing about cliches, they tend to be true. It is very much a relationship business, and when I was at Discovery, I knew exactly what Anne would want, or what Mediaset in Italy would be interested in, or what Arte would be interested in, and also what your competitors are up to. So you do have that ability to pick up a phone if it's in your interest to get the film made as well. I think we'll probably open up for questions if people have any questions. If you'd like to put your hand up so the lady with the microphone can pass it over. This lady over here. Can you say your name and who you are as well, please?
Vivian Norris, and I'm a producer-director, but I'm also a journalist. I'm writing about this as well. This is for Anne Julien. I'm working with Nadine Nor, and we had approached France Télévisions, and with all the changes that have taken place this past summer, the word that's come back via various Bonne Pioche and different producers is that there's less of a focus on international, or that perhaps it's better to really present a project as very much including a French element. Can you talk about that?
It really depends. It depends, one, on what the project is. It depends, two, on which broadcaster you're aiming for. Everyone wants to aim for France 2 because they have the most money, but they don't do as many co-productions. So for France 2, for instance, that's why it's very important to start off with what is the project. If it's a big blockbuster prime time thing that's going to give France 2 the best ratings they have for a year, then yes, go to France 2. Otherwise, there's still, as I said earlier in my presentation, France 5 tends to be the channel that does the most co-productions. It's also the only channel in France Television Group that actually will often co-produce directly with the producers, despite the difficulties that may entail, but it also might make things easier. It really depends on the project. So I wouldn't say there's less co-production going on. Things were sort of not at a standstill, but things were very slow for about 2 years with all the different restructuring, and then the restructure of the restructure, which I won't go into now because it's just so boring for me, and I don't really think you need to know. I mean, you'll find out well enough, but we're back to normal, I would say.
Okay.
No more questions? Oh. Well, I'll ask a question before everybody disappears off. Is there any particular trends that any of the panellists are seeing at the moment in terms of what people are absolutely looking for, or what they don't want? I think is probably what's fashionable, what's hot.
I really would love to answer this question. What works very well from our research for Western Europe in general is endurance and adventure, and this is an area that we're really, really keen on exploring, both with experts and amateurs who are genuinely doing their own expeditions. You saw Ed Stafford, who was the man in the jungle eating the monkey. He actually went on a 2.5-year journey and he filmed it all himself, so it's his own experience. This was incredibly high rating, not just in the UK, but throughout Western Europe, and this is an area that we really wish to explore further, so would really welcome talking to you about your ideas after this session.
Carl, are you finding what's going hot off the shelves?
Well, actually, I mean, just talking about, because we have an interesting thing in the US, and let's face it, the US market is the same size as the rest of the world in terms of finance money as well. Everything there, and I get weekly kind of updates from all the networks of what they want. All their programming seems to be going over to price quantifiable productions, i.e. there's a thing called American Pickers, where they go through people's garages and sheds and whatever, take items out, and America is totally fixated at the moment about pricing things. This glass is worth $20, this glass is worth $5, different, and there is hundreds of formats now, and whatever America does will eventually come to us, and you'll find there's a whole new group now. It won't be where the Nat Geos and the Smithsonians and all that are, because they don't want to price anything, because it's it's conjecture, but it's actually great entertainment. It's become the new format, and so I should imagine if you really want to do, you need to find in the various countries around the world, that will be the trend of the future. People want to know how much things are worth. It's the car boot sale scaled up to your home antiques, and it's like Antiques Roadshow, but that's taken America by storm. And every channel, it doesn't matter if it's women's skewed or technical or men's or whatever like that, they've all got their own version of this. And the Food Network have got their own version, and the whatever. So America usually leads the way. So watch that trend.
We like to call it mantiques, and we are indeed looking into this area.
Right, there we go.
No, I think I read somewhere there's something like 14 currently of these types of shows anyway.
Yeah.
In Spike TV, have just greenlit one. Christian, are you finding that broadcasters in particular are looking more towards their domestic market rather than the bigger subjects? Because that's what I'm feeling from here. Is I'm hearing two things in a way, as in terms of things that are working very, very well domestically, but have very little chance of translating, versus wildlife, for want of a better term, which is pretty damn universal.
I think we have, my experience is that we have on the international market two directions on the same time. On the one hand is domestic subjects very closely to the audience. In Germany, for example, at the RD stations, we have a couple of regional stations. They're really interested and focused now on subjects out of the region, because they are really close connected to the audience. And on the other hand, you have these major, very, very expensive, huge, big productions which are working worldwide, with, for example, recreations. It's like fiction, nearly like fiction, but it's hard to say. I don't know. The market is still so big and different, and many things. What you, for example, present, it doesn't work for the public channel in Germany. Never. So right now, and there's still a big difference between private channels and public channels. So.
And I think that's one of the key things, is to bear in mind editorially, where would you normally see your channel, also your show turn up? And if you go to, say, the BBC, they will, say probably to suggest, if you went to Nick Fraser at Storyville, he would tell you to probably go to DR Television or Arte or whatever. There's little sort of groups of commissioners that can sort of say, that's the sort of film that would work in that slot. And it can be confusing, but ultimately it's also it's a lot of hard work, but there's potentially more opportunities. And to just be aware of channels as they have audiences, they have distinct brands, they have distinct feel, and try and figure out which ones sort of match each other, as long as they don't stand on each other's toes, I think. One question? Can you use the microphone, please? Sorry.
What would you do if you have something that doesn't fit into any of the slots that have been currently discussed?
Well, we haven't covered off every slot in the universe, but...
I mean, I'll answer that because
sure.
France Television does have a lot of documentary slots, and we have many, many genres. And just what I was saying before, well, for instance, I can help. Now, I can help you navigate at France Television. I can tell you right away that wouldn't go anywhere, or that wouldn't go on France 3, but it might go on France 2, and here's the person you should get in touch with. I know that it's very difficult. I'm just answering for my group. The reason I kept talking about France 5 is that we were talking about, up here we were generally talking about the types of programs that we do together, and that go very well on France 5. But there are other slots and I can help. That's part of my job.
But there's also huge budget range. You know, you're obviously, if you can, I think Jamie Oliver's company at the moment launched a whole series of cookery programs aimed at schools on YouTube. YouTube wanted to get increasingly more educational product because they're banned from schools, as you know. So from that, they used that to pilot the main series that goes. So I think increasingly, to answer your question, you may be able to build an audience or a slot in the future on digital media in some way, and then the commissioners, once they've, especially if you present them with the number of hits that something's had, and then you bring it into the mainstream. So there's going to be other ways to crack this nut. I think in 2 or 3 years from now, these conversations will be totally different because digital media would have a huge influence on TV, and it's a great way of piloting things, getting an audience response without having to go to the problem of actually going through a commissioning editor. Effectively, you take the demographics in there and say, listen, the audience wants it, you need to take it.
But that, and what I said, that I could help you navigate at France Television, I think Carl said earlier, and it's so important, and I think people forget it, what is a distributor? That's the distributor's job. Carl isn't working alone. He's working with a big staff of people who know the different genres and the different groups that different genres can go to. So pick a good distributor. And I'm not saying this because Carl's my friend. I'm saying it because it's reality.
But we also pass on when projects come along, like broadcasters talk together, distributors do. When somebody comes with a certain sort of program that isn't our fit, factual entertainment, whatever, in a certain genre, we don't want it as part of our catalogue. We will pass it on to our colleagues in other companies, and they swap those things backwards and forwards. So we do genuinely try to help people, because the next time around they may have a perfect show for us. You try to be as helpful as possible.
Yeah, and we would do the same. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. We don't think we have time for one more question, or are we finished? One more question, finally. This lady here, you should have all spoken up earlier. You had your chance.
My name is Alexandra. I'm an independent producer. This may not be something you can answer, but I'm interested to learn from your expertise. I'm director-producer. Finally now specialised in film finance. I dropped all the city life and did my first film. And you didn't touch upon something we're interested, mixed genre. And when you actually used the factual elements, but then explored the docudrama bits.
We all do that. We do docudramas all the time.
To what extent are networks open to something that it's quite artsy, but yet in a way commercial, if I sound...
No, but it really depends. There again, it depends what the project is, what is it about, and indeed, whenever you pitch, I always tell people who are pitching, always save some time to say what the style is going to be. So if it's going to be a mixed genre, then the broadcaster will know it. But what really counts is the subject itself going to be something that the commissioning editor thinks will work.
I think a good example of that, History just did the most horrible people in history, and then it was like an adult program, but it gave they had psychologists and various people judging whether they were, one end psychopathic, the other, just had a bad childhood or whatever, you know, Alexander the Great, whatever, but they did it, all the gory bits in cartoon style, so that you saw it as a comic strip. So that is a really punchy, modern style for a fairly traditional show, and the graphics there, you know, it's a very popular show. That would be a good selling point if you were going into certain networks. I think that would probably possibly work on Discovery as well, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
if there are no bare bottoms.
Yeah.
No bare bottoms.
Yeah, really, really welcome. We mixed genre. I exec Aircraft Confidential from WMR last year. We're hoping to recommission a second series from them, subject to contract, I think I need to say. But I mean, that is testimony, archive, and also drama reconstruction, plus things like Monsters Inside Me, again, testimony, archive, and reconstruction. So those genres really, really work well.
Thank you. I'm quite surprised because I realized I've used everything one can possibly use in terms of archive, fiction, drama, and I also learned appears to work well in theatres as well. So it does give an option for Windows exploitation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank our panellists today for coming along and giving their time. Thank you.